Hi everybody, it's Mariana with Three Peaks Classroom. If you are new to my channel, hello and welcome. I'm a teacher here in Alberta, Canada, and I love to make helpful YouTube videos for other teachers just like you. In today's episode, I want to talk about the simple behavior management techniques that you should already be using in your classroom. Before I dive into the very first management technique, I want to paint a little scenario in your head that's going to highlight the importance of the very first technique. So imagine this, you're at a grocery checkout line. You and your friend are grabbing some snacks and some drinks for a Friday night in. The person in front of you has all of their groceries laid out on the conveyor belt in front of them, and they're bagging stuff, and it comes time to pay. And they're getting cash out of their wallet and they're paying, and then they realize that they're $5 short. And there's that awkward moment where they're reconsidering things. What am I going to do? I'm $5 short. And that's when they turn to you, the next person in line, and they ask, do you have $5? Do I give them $5? Do I look at what they're buying to see if it's justified to give them $5? Whatever ran through your mind, I just want you to think about the fact that we hesitated and you were considering all of your options. Now let's imagine that your good friend was the one that was in front of you and they were the ones that were $5 short. And then they turned and looked at you and they said, do you have $5? I don't have $5 to cover this. Do you hesitate and do you consider all of those options again, similarly like you did for the stranger? Or do you give them $5 without hesitation? Oh yeah, of course, no worries. Yeah, we're gonna have a great night. Don't worry about it. Again, whatever you chose to do does not matter. I want you to focus on in that moment, how long did you hesitate? How long did you consider your options for? Now, why am I bringing up this scenario just to highlight one management technique? It's because it's the most important management technique. And that is to build relationships. When you were considering how long you hesitated for the stranger, you probably hesitated a lot longer than you did for your good friend. And why is that the case? Because your friend, you have a relationship with them. So you are more willing to do something for your friend than you are for the stranger. And that is the underlying management technique. In the classroom, you want to make sure that you establish and have a very good relationship with all of your students. Simply relying on the idea that the teacher is the authority and should be respected, that's not a management technique that's going to cut it. And I'm not going to say here that students need to earn the respect or you need to earn respect as a teacher. No, there is an inherent level of respect as being the authority, but just simply relying on that is not going to cut it. So yes, the very first and the most important management technique in any classroom is to establish a relationship with each and every one of your students. You should be able to know what kind of a home they're from, how many siblings do they have a pet, what is a hobby that your students love to do. Now I get it. You're probably thinking in your brain, okay, Mariana, I have 36 students in my classroom and I have a massive amount of curriculum that I need to get through. How on earth am I going to spend the time to get to know each and every one of their students and their favorite hobbies? I get it. I've heard that and I've said that myself. But then I'm going to flip the question back to you and I'm going to ask you, what is more important in the classroom than getting to know and establishing a relationship with your students? I promise you that by establishing relationships with each and every one of your students, it will cut down misbehaviors in your classroom significantly. Plus, having that bond with your student will make them less likely to act out because they know that they are respected and cared for by the teacher in the classroom. Now, one way I've seen this done in a classroom of 36 kids, and yes, I do support a classroom with 36 children in it, is the teacher every morning has a question that she puts up on the board. And it's while the kids are trickling in and opening up their agendas and putting their things away and da-da-da-da. She has a question up on the board and it's like, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite fruit? What's your favorite whatever? And she asks every single one of her students. In a class of 36 kids, it's very difficult to have a deep and meaningful conversation with each and every one of your students, which is what we should be striving for every day. But regardless, she does this by putting up a question on the board and asking each kid as they come in, and that is sparking a conversation and dialogue. Because regardless of what happens for the rest of the day, the child knows that at least in that moment, when the teacher asks me and I give my answer back, she has heard me, and I love that. All right, my second tip is to review your class expectations and your class rules. We are going into the second week of January here. We just came back from a 2-week break, and students are probably getting a little squirrely, maybe a little bit lazy or whatever, and they're forgetting what the class expectations are. It's my recommendation in the classroom to go over those expectations as if it was the very first day of school. Review, this is what's allowed, this is what's not allowed, this is, my clear expectations for the classroom. Because just reviewing those rules will help you to have a smoother course over the next, let's say, 2 to 3 months, because we all know when we come back from spring break, we're going to have to do this again. But if you do not take the time to review expectations and procedures and rules, you're going to be playing catch up this entire time. Now, the good news is that it's not September 1st. It's not the very first day of school. So the kids already know kind of how things are run in the classroom, and they just need a little bit of a refresher. But taking the time to go over all of the expectations again will surely squash out some of those lesser behaviors that you don't want creeping up anyways. So take some time and go over class expectations again. Tip number 3 is to make sure that you have a way to recognize positive behaviors in your classroom. We want to be encouraging those good behaviors anyways. So how are you recognizing that? Perhaps you have a stamp system. I work in a classroom where they have a little stamp card on their desk, and if they're doing something positive, like they're on task or they were the first one to get their materials out or whatever, what is motivating them to do that? Well, a stamp on their card. And the stamp on the card, once they have their card filled out, then they get to enter it into a draw. And then there's prizes at the end of the month when she picks the card, whatever. That is a simple reward system that doesn't require a lot of effort. Just a stamper or even a pencil and the little card that's taped to their desk. Simple. One thing I do in my own classroom is I have a classroom economy system, and the kids have to earn money by doing some jobs and things like that, but they can also be rewarded if they are the first one on task, or they have the materials ready, or if they just do something kind and I just come around and I give them a buck and I'm like, man, that was awesome, good job. Having little ways to recognize positive behavior in the classroom will go a long way in managing those pesky behaviors. Tip number 4, let's not forget something that we learned in university, and that is to use close proximity. That is something that we use that's something we learned about in our university days, where just physically being close to the student will squash out behaviors. Not all behaviors, but some of them, because they say, oh, dang, the teacher's right next to me. I can't play in my desk, or I can't whatever. So don't forget about close proximity, and also don't forget about positively reinforcing students that are in close proximity to the student that is misbehaving. So if I have 3 kids that are sitting by my one little friend that's having a hard time, I will compliment 1, 2, and 3 and say, oh, you guys are doing such a great job. Thank you so much for working quietly on your task, or thank you so much for using a level 3 voice, or, thank you for sitting crisscross on the carpet. You guys are doing great. So don't forget about the very simplest of behavior management techniques, which is close proximity. My 5th and final simple management technique to use in the classroom is to be able to provide the students a choice when possible to complete a task. Now, we all know sometimes there is not a choice. In life, we don't get choices sometimes, but if you are able to give a choice, especially to those kids that have challenging behaviors, it will shift the focus from, I don't want to do it, to, oh, now I get a choice. And that shifts the energy right there. So if you're assigning an assignment and you're noticing that one kid, every time that you guys are doing a written assignment, that one kid is always asking to go to the bathroom, or, goofing off and interrupting the kid next to them, or can't find a pencil or whatever, and they're always delaying getting on task, can you give them a choice? How can they complete the assignment that doesn't involve writing? Because here we notice there's a pattern that constantly writing something is difficult for this student. Either they don't like to do it, I should say, or it's hard for them. Whatever the case, can they have a choice? Can they use a computer? Can they type their answers? Can they draw a picture and then label? Can they say it to you and you scribe it? I know that takes a lot of time out of our day, but perhaps for that one student, it's possible. Can they use a device and do speech to text, and then they copy whatever is written on their computer and they copy it down on their worksheet, because maybe that is what has to be handed in. Whatever the case, can you give the students a choice? Now, the reason why I picked that specific scenario is because my nephew actually had a really hard time with writing activities. And the teachers thought that, he had some form of ADHD or oppositional defiance disorder, because he just, every time written work came up, would get so frustrated. Well, it turns out that my nephew actually has dysgraphia. And writing for him is very difficult and very triggering. And so now that we know that he has this diagnosis, they're able to provide other strategies. But I'm not saying every kid has to have a diagnosis. Some work, yes, needs to be written. And that is the case too for my nephew. He has to have printed work done or handwritten work, whatever. But not everything has to be written. And in those cases, can you provide a choice for the student? All right, so there you go. Those are my 5 behavior management techniques that will help mitigate a large portion of those pesky misbehaviors in the classroom, with the first and foremost, number 1 being to establish relationships with each of your students. If you enjoyed this short and sweet episode, then go ahead and give the video a like so that this video could be sent to other educators as well, so they can make sure that they're using those 5 strategies as well in their classroom. And if you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and do that as we enter in the 5th season of episodes for 3 Peaks Classroom on YouTube. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. I hope you're having a wonderful start to the new year. Don't forget to review those classroom expectations and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.